The morning sky above Nexus 7 burned red as enemy ships dropped out of hyperspace. Hana pressed her face against the command center window, watching streaks of fire rain down on the mining colony she had called home for 3 years. The peaceful mining operation that had been running smoothly just hours ago was now under attack. "All defense platforms are responding," Day said from behind her, his voice tight with stress. The security chief's fingers moved quickly over his control panel, trying to coordinate their limited defenses. "But we're outgunned 5-1. Hana turned away from the window. The command center buzzed with activity as colonists ran back and forth, carrying reports and trying to make sense of the chaos outside. She had never expected to face a military attack. Nexus 7 was supposed to be safe, hidden in the outer rim where no one bothered to look. "Who are they?" she asked. "Vextar Empire," Day replied, his voice grim. "Their ships match the database. Looks like a full war fleet. The Vextar were known throughout the galaxy as raiders and conquerors. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they could not use. Their technology was advanced, their ships fast and deadly." Hana felt her stomach drop as she realized what this meant. "Why would they come here?" she whispered. "The quantum crystals," Day said. "We've been mining them for months. Word must have gotten out." Another explosion shook the building. Through the window, Hana could see one of their orbital defense platforms break apart, its metal pieces spinning away into space. The enemy ships moved closer to the planet, their dark hulls gleaming in the sunlight. "How long do we have?" Hana asked. Day checked his readings. "Maybe 2 hours before they break through our remaining defenses. After that—" He did not finish the sentence. Hana activated the colony-wide communication system. Her voice echoed through every building, every tunnel, every corner of the settlement. "All colonists, this is Administrator Hana. We are under attack by hostile forces. Begin immediate evacuation procedures. Move to your assigned transport ships. This is not a drill." The response was immediate. Through the command center's cameras, she could see people running through the streets. Families carried bags and children, heading for the spaceport. The different species that made up their colony worked together, helping each other reach safety. The insect-like Corvani used their strong arms to carry heavy equipment. The crystal-bodied Gelti organized supplies with their precise thinking. The gas-formed Nephrim scouts flew ahead to check if paths were clear. "Transport ships 1 through 6 are loaded and ready for departure," reported June from the medical center. The Gelti doctor had been working non-stop to prepare wounded miners and get medical supplies ready for evacuation. "Launch them," Hana ordered. "Get as many people out as possible." The first wave of transport ships lifted off from the spaceport. They were slow, civilian vessels meant for carrying ore and supplies, not for escaping from a battle. Hana watched them climb toward space, hoping they would make it past the enemy fleet. They did not. Bright flashes lit up the sky as Vextar fighters intercepted the transports. One by one, the civilian ships exploded, their debris raining down on the colony below. Hundreds of innocent people died in those first few minutes, and Hana felt each death like a physical blow. "They're not letting anyone escape," Day said, his voice flat. "They want to keep us here." "Why?" Hana asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. "Slaves," Day replied. "The Vextar need workers for their mines. They'll take anyone who survives and work them to death." Another wave of explosions rocked the colony as enemy bombers attacked the mining equipment. The Vextar were being careful not to damage the quantum crystal deposits, but everything else was fair game. Power stations exploded in showers of sparks. Water treatment plants collapsed into rubble. The carefully built infrastructure of 3 years was being destroyed in minutes. Nari's voice came over the communication system from the engineering section. Main power is down to 40%. Life support is holding, but not for long. The enemy is targeting our generators. Hana made a hard decision. All remaining civilians moved to the underground shelters. Emergency Protocol 7. Locked down. Everything. The underground shelters had been built as protection against mining accidents, not military attacks. They had thick walls and independent life support, but they were not meant to hold the entire population. People would have to squeeze together and hope their supplies lasted. "What about the distress signal?" asked Day. Hannah had almost forgotten. In all the chaos, she had not yet called for help. She quickly activated the long-range communication array and began broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. "This is Nexus 7 Colony Administrator Hana," she said into the microphone. "We are under attack by Vextar forces, requesting immediate military assistance. Repeat, we are under attack and need help. Any ships in the area, please respond." The answer was silence. No one replied to their calls for help. "The nearest military base is 3 days away," Day said quietly. "Even if they got our message right now and left immediately, they would arrive too late." Through the window, Hana could see Vextar dropships landing near the mining complex. Soldiers in dark armor poured out, carrying heavy weapons. They moved, with the confidence of an army that had done this many times before. "We need to buy time," she said. "Maybe someone will hear our distress call. Maybe help will come." Day looked at her with sad eyes. "Hana, no one is coming. We're too far out, too small to matter. The galaxy won't even notice we're gone," but Hana refused to give up. She kept broadcasting their distress call, sending it out into the dark space around their system. Somewhere out there, someone had to be listening. Someone had to care. The enemy soldiers were getting closer. Through the security cameras, she could see them setting up heavy weapons and preparing to assault the main buildings. The few defense guns the colony had were quickly destroyed by enemy fire. "All security teams to the perimeter," Day ordered. "We'll hold them off as long as we can." Hana knew it was hopeless. They had mining equipment and a handful of security guards against a professional army, but they had to try. They had to fight for every minute, every second, hoping that somehow, somewhere, help would come. She kept broadcasting, her voice growing hoarse as she repeated their plea for help over and over again. Outside, the battle for Nexus 7 had begun, and it did not look like the colonists would win. 3 hours had passed since Hana first sent out the distress call. The communication array continued to broadcast their plea for help into empty space, but no one answered. The silence from the galaxy felt like a cold weight on her chest. The Vextar had taken their time with the attack. Their war commander, a tall creature called Thaxir, seemed to enjoy the slow conquest. Instead of rushing to finish the colonists quickly, he ordered his forces to destroy the colony piece by piece. It was cruel, but it was also smart. The longer they took, the more frightened the survivors became. "Medical center to command," June's voice crackled over the internal communication system. "I have 47 wounded down here. We're running low on medical supplies." Hana pressed the reply button. "Hold on, June. We're doing everything we can." But they both knew it was not enough. In the underground shelters, hundreds of colonists huddled together in the dark. The life support systems were working, but barely. The air was getting thick and stale. Children cried while their parents tried to comfort them with words that no one believed. Day stood at the tactical display, watching red dots represent enemy forces moving through their colony. His security teams had fought bravely, but they were down to just 12 people. Everyone else was either dead or had fallen back to protect the shelter entrances. "They're setting up some kind of drilling equipment near the main mining shaft," he reported. "Looks like they want to start extracting crystals right away." "While we're still alive?" Hana asked. "The Vextar don't waste time," Day replied. "They'll work around us until they decide we're more trouble than we're worth. Then they'll finish us off." Nari's voice came from the engineering section where she had been working non-stop to keep their systems running. "Power is down to 20%. I can maybe squeeze another hour out of the generators, but after that we'll be running on emergency batteries." "How long will the batteries last?" Hana asked. "Maybe 6 hours if we shut down everything except life support." 6 hours. That was all the time they had left before the shelters became tombs. Hana looked around the command center, which had become much quieter as people either fled or died. Only a few essential staff remained, all of them looking to her for answers she did not have. Outside, explosions continued to shake the ground. The Vextar were methodically destroying anything they did not need. The school where Corvani children had learned to read. The park where different species had come together for festivals. The small temple where the Gelti had practiced their crystal meditation. All of it was being reduced to rubble. "Any response to our distress call?" Day asked. Hana shook her head. "Nothing. Not even an automated reply." She had been broadcasting continuously, sending their call for help in every direction. The message went out in standard galactic languages, in emergency frequencies, even in the old trade codes that merchants used. But space remained silent. "Maybe the array is damaged," suggested one of the communication technicians. "No," Nari said from engineering. "I'm monitoring it from here. The signal is going out strong. It's reaching at least 10 light years in every direction." 10 light years was more than enough to reach several inhabited systems. But those systems had their own problems, their own troubles. A small mining colony in the outer rim was not important enough to risk ships and lives for. Thaxer's voice suddenly boomed through the colony's speakers. The Vextar commander had taken control of their communication system. "Attention, colonists! This is War Commander Thaxer of the Vextar 7th Fleet. Your resistance is pointless. Surrender now, and some of you will be allowed to live as workers." Hana grabbed the microphone. "This is Administrator Hana. We will not surrender to raiders and murderers." Thaxer's laugh was harsh and cold. "Very well. We will simply wait for your life support to fail. The result will be the same, but you will suffer more." The transmission ended, leaving them in silence again. Hana realized that the enemy commander was right. They could not win this fight. Their weapons were too weak, their defenses too thin. All they could do was wait and hope. "I should have evacuated the colony weeks ago," she said quietly. "The intelligence reports mentioned increased Vexitar activity in this sector." "You couldn't have known they would come here," Day said. "Nexus 7 isn't even on most star maps." "But the quantum crystals are valuable enough to attract attention. I should have seen this coming," June's voice interrupted them. "Hana, I need you to make a decision. Some of the wounded are asking me to help them die peacefully. They don't want to suffer when the life support fails." The request hit Hana like a physical blow. These people had trusted her to keep them safe, and now they were asking to die rather than face what was coming. She closed her eyes and tried to think of some other option, some miracle solution. "Tell them to wait," she said finally. "Just a little longer. Maybe something will change, but what could change?" They had sent out distress calls for hours with no response. The nearest military forces were days away. Even if some merchant ship picked up their signal, what could a single civilian vessel do against an entire Vextar fleet? Day checked his security monitors again. "They're moving drilling equipment into position. Once they start mining, they won't need us anymore. They'll just seal the shelters and let us suffocate." "How long do we have?" "Maybe 2 hours before they start the mining operation." 2 hours. Hana continued broadcasting their distress call, but hope was fading with each passing minute. The galaxy was vast and full of its own problems. No one was coming to save a small mining colony that most people had never heard of. In the shelters below, parents held their children close and tried not to let them see the fear in their eyes. The different species that had lived together peacefully for years now faced the end together. Some prayed to their various gods. Others simply sat in silence, waiting for the inevitable. Nari managed to restore partial power to the external cameras. The images they showed were heartbreaking. The colony that had taken 3 years to build was now mostly ruins. The gardens, where families had grown food, were burned. The workshops where artists had created beautiful things were smashed. "Maybe we should consider Thaxer's offer," suggested one of the technicians. "Slavery is better than death." "Is it?" Day asked. "Have you seen what happens to Vextar slaves? They work them to death in the deep mines. Most don't last 6 months." Hana kept broadcasting, her voice growing weaker as exhaustion took hold. "This is Nexus 7 colony. We are under attack. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help. We have families here, children, innocent people who have done nothing wrong." The stars did not answer. Space remained cold and empty and silent. In a galaxy full of billions of people, the colonists of Nexus 7 were alone with their fate. 5 hours had passed since the attack began. The Vextar had settled into a routine of systematic destruction, taking their time to strip everything useful from the colony. Their massive drilling machines were now positioned over the main quantum. Crystal deposits, ready to begin extraction at War Commander Thaxer's order. Nari wiped sweat from her forehead as she worked at the engineering console. The Nephirim engineer had been pushing their failing systems beyond their limits, trying to buy precious extra time for the survivors in the underground shelters. Her gaseous form flickered with exhaustion, but she refused to give up. "Power holding at 15%, she reported to Hana. "But the main generator is making strange noises. I don't think it will last much longer." Hana nodded without looking away from the communication console. She had been broadcasting their distress call. For hours, her voice now hoarse and desperate. The words had become automatic, a prayer repeated into the void with no expectation of answer. "This is Nexus 7 colony," she said for the 1,000th time. "We are under attack by Vextar forces. Civilian population in immediate danger, requesting urgent assistance from any ships in the area." Day sat slumped in his chair at the security station, watching helplessly as enemy soldiers moved through their destroyed colony. His defense teams had been reduced to just 4 people, all of them wounded and running low on ammunition. There was nothing left to defend except the sealed entrances to the underground shelters. "Contact from the medical center," June's voice came through the speakers. "We've lost 3 more people. The air recycling system in Shelter 7 is failing." "Can you fix it?" Hana asked. "I'm trying, but I need parts we don't have. Maybe 30 minutes before the carbon dioxide levels become toxic." 30 minutes. Hana closed her eyes and felt the weight of leadership crushing down on her. Every decision she made, every minute she delayed, meant more people would die. But what choice did she have? Surrender meant slavery and a slow death in Vextar mines. Fighting meant a quick death, but at least they would die free. Nari suddenly straightened at her console, her gaseous form brightening with excitement. Wait, I'm getting something strange on the long-range sensors. What kind of strange? Day asked, looking up from his security monitors. Energy readings, very faint, but moving fast. Much faster than it should be possible. Hana stopped broadcasting and moved to look over Nari's shoulder at the sensor display. Lines of data scrolled across the screen, but most of it meant nothing to her. Could it be more Vextar ships? No, Nari said, adjusting the sensor array. The energy signature is completely different. I've never seen anything like this before. Day joined them at the engineering station. His knowledge of military technology was better than anyone else's on the colony. He studied the readings for a long moment, then shook his head. This doesn't match any known ship type in the database. The velocity readings have to be wrong. I've checked them 3 times, Nari said. Whatever this is, it's moving at nearly 30% of light speed. That's impossible for any ship with mass. Unless the sensors are damaged, Hana suggested, though she could hear the hope creeping into her own voice. They're working fine. I can still track the Vextar fleet perfectly. Nari made more adjustments to the array. The contact is definitely there. It's just strange. For the first time in hours, Hana felt something other than despair. Maybe this was nothing. Maybe it was just a sensor ghost or a piece of space debris. But maybe, just maybe, it was something else. Something that could help them. How far away? She asked. At current speed, maybe 20 minutes until it reaches the edge of our system. 20 minutes. That was longer than the failing life support. In shelter, 7 would last. But it was also closer than any help they had any right to expect. Hana found herself staring at the sensor display, willing the mysterious contact to be real. Meanwhile, aboard his command ship in orbit above Nexus 7, War Commander Thaxier was growing impatient. The conquest was taking longer than planned, and his superiors expected regular reports on mining operations. The quantum crystals were valuable, but only if they could be extracted and shipped quickly. "Begin drilling operations," he ordered his subordinates. "We have wasted enough time on these insects." The massive drilling machines roared to life, their diamond-tipped bores beginning to carve into the planet's surface. The sound was loud enough to be heard even in the underground shelters, where families huddled together and wondered if this was the beginning of the end. Back in the command center, Nari was becoming more excited as she tracked the approaching energy signature. "It's definitely artificial," she announced. "The movement pattern is too regular to be natural, and there are gravity distortions around it." "Gravity distortions?" Day asked. "Small ones, but measurable. Like the space around the object is being bent somehow." Hana did not understand the technical details, but she could see that Nari believed this was important. The engineer's gaseous form was practically glowing with excitement as she worked at her console. "Could it be a rescue ship?" Hana asked. "Maybe," Nari said. "But if it is, it's using technology I've never heard of. The power requirements for this kind of speed should be enormous." Day checked his security monitors again. The Vextar soldiers had noticed the drilling operations beginning and were moving to secure the mining area. "If someone is coming to help us, they better hurry. The enemy is starting to dig. Hana returned to the communication console and resumed broadcasting, but now her message included new information. This is Nexus 7 colony under attack. We have detected an unknown contact approaching our system. If you are responding to our distress call, please identify yourself. The reply was silence, as it had been for hours. But now the silence felt different. Instead of the empty void of space, it felt like the quiet before a storm. Nari continued tracking the mysterious object as it raced toward their system. The energy readings were unlike anything in her engineering database. Whatever was coming had technology far more advanced than anything she had ever seen. 15 minutes to system edge, she reported. In the underground shelters, June was working desperately to repair the failing air recycling system in Shelter 7. She had managed to slow the carbon dioxide buildup, but she could not stop it completely. People were starting to feel dizzy and sick. "Hana," she called over the communication system. "I need to start moving people from Shelter 7 to other areas. We're running out of breathable air." "Do it," Hana ordered. "Move them wherever you can find space." The overcrowding in the shelters was becoming dangerous. People were pressed, together so tightly they could barely move. The different species tried to help each other, but there was only so much space available. 10 minutes, Nari announced, her voice tight with concentration. Hana found herself holding her breath as she watched the sensor display. The unknown contact was definitely real, definitely approaching their system at impossible speed. But she had no idea if it was friend or enemy. For all she knew, it could be another Vextar fleet coming to speed up the mining operation. "Any response to communications?" Day asked. "Nothing," Hana replied. "Either they can't hear us, or they're not interested in talking, or they're maintaining radio silence for tactical reasons," Day suggested. The possibility sent a chill down Hana's spine. If this was a military vessel, it might attack both the Vextar and the colonists. Some species considered all sides in a conflict to be equally valid targets. 5 minutes to system edge, Nari said. The drilling machines grew louder as they bit deeper into the planet's crust. Soon they would reach the quantum crystal deposits, and the Vextar would have everything they came for. After that, the colonists would become unnecessary witnesses to be eliminated. Hana gripped the communication console and made one final broadcast. "Unknown vessel approaching Nexus 7 system. This is Administrator Hana of the civilian mining colony. We are under attack and in desperate need of assistance. Please respond if you can hear this message." Still no answer. But the energy signature was growing stronger with each passing second, and space itself seemed to be holding its breath. The moment the unknown contact reached the edge of the system, reality broke. Nari stared at her sensor displays in shock as the readings went completely insane. Energy levels spiked beyond anything her instruments could measure. Gravity waves rippled outward from a point in space where nothing should exist. And then, impossibly, space began to tear. "What's happening?" Hana asked, rushing to look over the engineer's shoulder. "I don't know," Nari whispered, her gaseous form flickering with amazement and fear. "The fabric of space is being cut open. That should be impossible." Through the transparent aluminum windows of the command center, they could see it happening. At the edge of the system, where only empty space had existed moments before, a wound appeared in the star field. It was not black like the darkness between stars. It was something else entirely, a color that hurt to look at directly. The tear in space widened, and something began to emerge from it. First came a nose that looked like the beak of some massive predatory bird, then a hull that seemed to be made of angles that should not fit together. The ship that pushed through the impossible opening was unlike anything in any galactic database. "Dear spirits," Day breathed, his voice barely a whisper. "What is that thing?" The vessel was enormous, easily the size of a Vextar battleship, but its design followed no known principles of engineering. Sharp edges jutted out at impossible angles. The hull seemed to shift and change as they watched, as if it existed in more dimensions than their eyes could see. Symbols covered its surface, writing in a script that looked both ancient and somehow alive. Are those human markings?" Day asked, squinting at the display. Hana looked closer. The symbols did have a familiar quality to them, but they were unlike any human writing she had ever seen. They seemed to move and flow across the ship's hull like living things. "Impossible," she said. "Humans don't have technology like this. They disappeared from this part of the galaxy centuries ago." But even as she said it, she remembered the old stories. Tales told by drunk spacers in remote trading posts. Stories of ghost ships that appeared from nowhere to help the desperate or punish the wicked. Ships crewed by humans who had learned to move between the spaces where normal physics did not apply. The mysterious vessel finished emerging from its tear in space. The wound in reality sealed itself behind it, leaving no trace that it had ever existed. The ship hung in space for a moment, its impossible geometry making it hard for their sensors to get a proper reading on its size or mass. Aboard the Vextar command ship, War Commander Thaxir was experiencing his own confusion and growing alarm. His tactical officers were reporting readings that made no sense. The new arrival did not appear on any of their standard sensors, but it was clearly there, hanging in space like a metal storm cloud. "What species builds ships like that?" demanded one of his subordinates. "None that I know of," Thaxir replied, his voice carefully controlled. "But it matters little. One ship against our entire fleet is still just one ship. Continue drilling. Operations." But privately, the war commander felt a chill of unease. In his many years of conquest, he had learned to trust his instincts, and his instincts were telling him that this was not a normal enemy. Back on Nexus 7, Nari was still trying to make sense of her sensor readings. "The energy signature is completely off the scale," she reported. "Whatever that ship is powered by, it's not fusion, not antimatter, not anything I recognize." "Is it responding to communications?" Hana asked. "I'm not picking up any transmissions." "But there's something else. The space around the ship is wrong. Bent. Like the ship exists partially outside our normal universe." Day had been studying the newcomer through their optical telescopes. "There," he said suddenly, pointing at the main display. "On the hull. Those symbols. I've seen them before." "Where?" Hana asked. "In the old archives. Pre-war human military markings. But these are different somehow. Evolved." The mysterious ship began to move, and its motion defied every law of physics Nari thought she understood. It did not accelerate gradually like normal vessels. Instead, it simply started moving at tremendous speed, as if it had decided that momentum and inertia were suggestions rather than laws. "It's heading for the Vextar fleet," Day observed. "At that speed, it will reach them in minutes," Nari added. Hana felt her heart racing. If this was some kind of rescue attempt, it was the most dramatic one she had ever heard of. But she still had no idea who these strangers were or why they had come. The Vextar fleet was beginning to respond to the newcomer. Their warships were powerful vessels with heavy armor and deadly weapons. War Commander Thaxer had conquered dozens of worlds with these ships, but as they moved to intercept the strange vessel, something odd happened. The human ship simply phased through their weapons fire. Nari watched the tactical display in amazement. The energy beams are passing right through it. How is that possible? Maybe it's not completely in our dimension, Day suggested, like it's hovering between realities. The possibility was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. If these were indeed humans, they had clearly developed technology far beyond anything the galaxy had seen before. Technology that treated the basic laws of physics like old suggestions that could be ignored when convenient. The strange ship continued its approach toward the Vextar fleet, moving in ways that made Nari's engineer brain hurt. It would suddenly change direction without slowing down, or phase partially out of existence before reappearing somewhere else entirely. They're heading straight for the command ship, Day noted. War Commander Thaxir was no longer feeling confident. His weapons could not touch the enemy vessel, and his sensors could barely track it. The ship moved like it was being piloted by someone who understood space in ways the Vextar could not comprehend. All ships formed defensive formation around. "The command vessel," he ordered. "Concentrate fire on that thing when it gets close enough." But the human ship had other plans. Instead of attacking the fleet directly, it came to a stop just outside their weapons range. For a moment, it simply hung there in space, its impossible geometry making it hard to look at directly. And then, finally, it spoke. The transmission came on frequencies so old that most modern ships did not even monitor them anymore. Primitive radio waves, the kind of communication technology that had been obsolete for centuries, but somehow the signal was crystal clear. "This is Captain Hyun of the United Earthship Indomitable," said a calm female voice speaking accented but perfect galactic standard. "I am responding to a distress call from Nexus 7 colony. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions in this system." The politeness of the request was almost surreal given the circumstances. Here was a ship that had torn through space, itself to arrive at their system, using technology that seemed to mock the laws of physics, and its captain was asking politely for identification. Hana grabbed the communication console so quickly she nearly fell over. "Captain Hyun, this is Administrator Hana of Nexus 7 Colony. We are under attack by Vextar forces. Our civilian population is trapped and in immediate danger." "Understood, Administrator Hana," came the reply. "Please maintain your current position." "We will handle this situation." War Commander Thaxir's voice cut across the communication channel, harsh and demanding. "Unknown vessel, you are interfering with a legitimate military operation. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." There was a pause. Then Captain Hyun's voice returned, still perfectly polite, but somehow colder than the vacuum of space. "Negative," she said simply. And with that single word, the real battle began. The word negative hung in space like a challenge. Captain Hyun had spoken it with such calm certainty that it seemed to carry the weight of inevitability. War Commander Thaxir felt something he had not experienced in many years of conquest. Uncertainty. "I say again," Thaxir transmitted, his voice harder now. "You will withdraw from this system immediately. This is Vextar territory under military occupation." "I heard you the first time," Captain Hyun replied, her tone still polite, but with an edge that suggested patience was not unlimited. "And I said negative. We do not recognize Vextar claims to civilian territories." On Nexus 7, Hana listened to the exchange with growing amazement. The human captain was speaking to the Vextar war commander as if she held all the advantages, despite being outnumbered 20-1. Either she was incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. "Captain Hyun," Hana transmitted. "There are nearly 2,000 civilians on this planet, families with children. If you're planning to fight, please, be careful." "Understood, Administrator. We will take every precaution to protect civilian lives. In fact, we would like to request permission to begin rescue operations while we deal with the current situation." Permission. The human captain was asking permission to help them. In all the chaos and desperation of the last few hours, no one had bothered with such courtesies. The Vextar had simply attacked. Most rescue operations would have simply swooped in and started giving orders. But these humans were asking politely for permission to save lives. "Permission granted," Hana said, her voice shaking with emotion. "Thank you. Thank you so much." "Our pleasure, Administrator. Stand by for transport." Day looked up from his tactical display with confusion. "Transport? How are they going to transport anyone? They're one ship against an entire fleet." Before anyone could answer, the space around the UES Indomitable began to shimmer. The air itself seemed to sparkle with strange energy patterns. And then, impossible things began to happen. Small craft began materializing around the human ship, not launching from docking bays or emerging from cargo holds, actually materializing out of thin air as if they were being assembled from the vacuum of space itself. Within moments, a dozen sleek vessels hung in formation around the Indomitable. "How are they doing that?" Nari asked, staring at her sensors in disbelief. "I have no idea," Day replied. "Matter transmission? Molecular assembly? Some kind of dimensional technology?" The small craft began moving toward Nexus 7, and their approach was unlike anything the colonists had ever seen. They did not follow ballistic trajectories or use conventional thrust. Instead, they seemed to slide through space as if it were water, moving in smooth curves that should have been impossible. War Commander Thaxter was becoming increasingly agitated. The human ships were ignoring his fleet entirely, flying past his interceptors as if they were not even there. When he ordered his fighters to attack the smaller vessels, their weapons passed harmlessly through them. "They're not completely in our dimension," reported his tactical officer. "The ships are phasing in and out of normal space." "Then how are we supposed to fight them?" Thaxter demanded. His science officer, a nervous creature named Vexcol, studied his readings with growing alarm. "Sir, the energy signatures suggest technology far beyond our current understanding. These humans have capabilities we cannot match." "Impossible," Thaxter snapped. "Humans are primitive. They disappeared from this sector because they were weak." But even as he said it, he was beginning to doubt his own words. The evidence of his eyes suggested otherwise. These humans had technology that treated the basic laws of physics as mere suggestions. Meanwhile, on Nexus 7, the first of the human rescue craft was approaching the planet's surface. It came down through the atmosphere without causing any of the heat or turbulence that normal ships produced. Instead, it descended like a falling leaf, gentle and completely silent. "This is Rescue Craft Alpha 7, came a new voice over the communication system. A young man speaking with the same accent as Captain Hyun. "We are prepared to begin evacuating civilians from the underground shelters. Please provide entry coordinates." June's voice crackled with excitement from the medical center. "Shelter 7 has completely failed life support. We need immediate evacuation for 63 people." Understood. We'll start there. Please have everyone ready for transport. How are you planning to get them out? June asked. The shelter entrances are sealed and surrounded by Vextar soldiers. That won't be a problem, the human pilot replied with what sounded like amusement. June soon discovered what he meant. The rescue craft positioned itself directly above Shelter 7, and then something extraordinary happened. A beam of soft blue light extended down from the ship, passing through solid rock as if it were air. The light touched the sealed shelter door and simply made it disappear. Not destroyed, not melted or blasted apart. It simply ceased to exist. Molecular disintegration field, Nari whispered, watching through the security cameras. They're taking apart matter at the atomic level. The same blue light began lifting people out of the shelter. Not with mechanical grabbers or transport platforms, but with some kind of gravity manipulation that gently raised them through the solid rock above their heads. Families floated upward like they were swimming through water, completely unharmed by the passage through stone and earth. War Commander Thaxir watched the rescue operation with growing rage and frustration. His soldiers were trying to stop the evacuation, but their weapons could not touch the human craft. When they fired at the floating civilians, the energy beams were deflected by invisible shields. "This is intolerable," he snarled. "All ships, concentrate fire on the large vessel. Destroy their command ship and the smaller ones will surrender." The Vextar fleet opened fire with everything they had. Particle beams, plasma cannons, missile volleys, and kinetic projectiles all converged on the UES Indomitable. The combined firepower was enough to destroy a small moon. It had no effect whatsoever. The weapons fire passed through the human ship as if it were a hologram. Some beams seemed to bend around it. Others simply vanished upon contact with the hull. The Indomitable continued hovering in space, completely undamaged and apparently unconcerned. "Status report." Captain Hyun's voice came over the communication channel, still speaking to Hana as if nothing unusual was happening. "Rescue operations proceeding smoothly," Hana replied, watching in amazement as more civilians were lifted from the underground shelters. "But the Vextar are getting desperate. They might try something drastic." "We're monitoring the situation," Captain Hyun assured her. "Don't worry. We won't let them harm any more civilians." The confidence in the captain's voice was absolute. She spoke as if the outcome of the battle was already decided, despite being outnumbered and outgunned by conventional standards. But then, there was nothing conventional about human technology. Day was studying the tactical display with the eye of a professional soldier. "They're not even fighting back," he observed. "The humans are just ignoring the Vextar completely, while they rescue our people." "Maybe they don't consider the Vextar a threat," Nari suggested. The idea was staggering. The Vextar 7th Fleet was one of the most powerful military forces in this part of the galaxy. They had conquered entire star systems with these ships, but the humans were treating them like a minor inconvenience, something to be dealt with. After the important work of saving lives was finished, more rescue craft materialized around the planet. Each one began extracting civilians from different shelters, working with smooth efficiency that spoke of long practice. The human crews coordinated their efforts perfectly, making sure everyone was evacuated safely while avoiding any risk to the colonists. "This is Medical Rescue Delta 4, came another transmission. "We're detecting several critically injured individuals. We're prepared to provide advanced medical treatment if needed." "Please," June replied immediately. "I have people who won't survive much longer without help." Transmitting medical scanner data now. "Our doctors will begin treatment during transport." Hana found herself crying as she watched the rescue operation. After hours of despair, after accepting that they were all going to die forgotten in the Outer Rim, help had come from the most unexpected source. Humans who had vanished from the galaxy centuries ago had returned with impossible technology and unlimited compassion. War Commander Thaxir was beginning to realize that his carefully planned conquest was falling apart. The humans were systematically removing his potential slaves, and his weapons were completely useless against their technology. "Sir," his tactical officer reported nervously, "perhaps we should consider withdrawing. These humans clearly have capabilities beyond our understanding." "No!" Thaxir snarled. "We came here for the quantum crystals, and we will take them. Order the drilling teams to accelerate operations. If we cannot stop the humans, we can at least complete our primary objective." But as he gave the order, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The UES Indomitable was turning to face his fleet directly. For the first time since its arrival, the human ship seemed to be paying attention to his forces, and Captain Hyun's voice, when it came over the communication channel, had lost all of its politeness. 30 seconds. War Commander Thaxir stared at the communication console as if he could not believe what he had just heard. In all his years of conquest, no one had ever given him an ultimatum. The Vextar were the ones who issued demands, not the ones who received them. "You dare threaten us?" he transmitted back, his voice filled with rage. "We are the Vextar 7th Fleet. We have conquered 50 worlds. We do not retreat from primitives and their parlor tricks." The response came not in words, but in something that made reality itself scream. The UES Indomitable began to change. Its impossible geometry shifted and flowed like liquid metal, revealing weapon systems that had been hidden within its hull. But these were not normal weapons. They were openings into something else, windows that looked out into the space between spaces where normal physics went to die. Nari watched her sensor displays in growing terror as energy readings spiked beyond anything her instruments could measure. "The power output is increasing exponentially," she reported, her gaseous form flickering with fear. "Whatever they're charging up, it's drawing energy from somewhere else entirely." "Somewhere else?" Day asked. "Not our universe," Nari whispered. "They're tapping into other dimensions for power." The space around the Indomitable began to sing. It was not a sound that could be heard with ears, but something that resonated directly in the minds of everyone who witnessed it. A harmony that spoke of vast intelligence and terrible purpose, of patience finally exhausted and mercy withdrawn. War Commander Thaxir felt that song in his bones and suddenly understood that he had made a terrible mistake. These were not the weak humans his people remembered from centuries past. These were something new, something evolved, something that had learned to exist between the spaces where gods walked. "All ships, emergency retreat pattern," he shouted, but it was already too late. The Indomitable fired. The beam that emerged from the human ship was not made of energy or matter. It was made of possibility itself, of the fundamental forces that decided what could exist and what could not. Where it touched the lead Vextar destroyer, the ship did not explode or burn or break apart. It simply stopped being. One moment there was a massive warship with a crew of 200 soldiers. The next moment there was empty space, as if the ship had never existed at all. The atoms that had made up the vessel were not destroyed or scattered. They were convinced to become something else entirely, or perhaps nothing at all. "By the dark void," Thaxir breathed, staring at the empty space where his ship had been. "What kind of weapons are these?" Captain Hyun's voice returned to the communication. Channel still calm, but now carrying an undertone of something far more dangerous than anger. War Commander, I gave you 30 seconds to withdraw. You chose to ignore my warning. Now you will face the consequences of that choice. The Indomitable began to move, and its motion was unlike anything the Vextar had ever seen. The ship did not accelerate through space so much as it convinced space to rearrange itself around it. One moment it was at the edge of the system. The next, it was in the middle of the Vextar formation, its impossible weapons already charging for another shot. Scatter formation, Thaxir ordered. Use evasive maneuvers. His ships tried to flee, but the human vessel seemed to anticipate their every move. It phased in and out of normal space, appearing behind fleeing ships before they could react. Each time it fired, another Vextar vessel simply ceased to exist. But the Indomitable was not just hunting them. It was teaching them. When a Vextar cruiser tried to target the human rescue ship still evacuating civilians, the Indomitable appeared directly in its path. The human ship's hull opened to reveal defensive systems that created a wall of twisted space-time, deflecting the Vextar weapons harmlessly away. You will not harm civilians, Captain Hyun transmitted on an open channel. Any ship that targets non-combatants will be eliminated immediately. To prove her point, she erased 2 more Vextar vessels that had been moving toward the planet's surface. On Nexus 7, Hana watched the battle through the command center's cameras with a mixture of awe and terror. The humans were not just winning the fight. They were rewriting the rules of what warfare could be. Their ship moved through space like a living thing, striking with surgical precision while protecting the innocent with absolute determination. How are they doing this? Day asked, his soldier's mind struggling to understand what he was seeing. They're not fighting in our dimension, Nari replied, her voice filled with wonder. Look at the energy readings. The ship exists partially in normal space and partially somewhere else. They can attack us, but we can barely touch them. The rescue operations continued even as the battle raged around them. Human evacuation craft continued to lift civilians from the underground shelters, their crews working with calm efficiency despite the chaos above their heads. They had clearly done this before, many times. Rescue operations 60% complete, reported one of the human pilots. All critical medical cases have been evacuated successfully. June's voice came over the communication system, filled with amazement. Administrator Hana, you need to see this. The human medical technology is incredible. They're healing injuries that should be impossible to fix. But Hana could not look away from the battle above. The Vextar fleet was being systematically dismantled by a single human ship. War Commander Thaxir's proud armada was being reduced to empty space, one vessel at a time. The Vextar tried everything they could think of. They launched fighters. But the small craft simply vanished when they got too close to the Indomitable. They fired missiles, but the weapons were convinced to detonate harmlessly in empty space. They tried ramming attacks, but their ships passed through the human vessel like it was made of smoke. This is impossible, Thaxir muttered, watching his forces disappear. No species has technology this advanced. The humans were supposed to be gone. His science officer, Vexcol, was studying the readings from their failed attacks. Sir, I don't think they ever left. I think they just learned to exist where we couldn't follow them. The possibility was terrifying. If the humans had been watching, from between dimensions all this time, if they had been developing this impossible technology in secret, then every Vextar conquest for the past centuries had been carried out under their observation. The implications were staggering. The Indomitable appeared next to Thaxer's command ship, its weapons charging with that terrible harmony that made reality sing. For a moment, the war commander thought his death had come. But instead of firing, Captain Hyun's voice filled his bridge. "War Commander Thaxer," she said, her tone now carrying the weight of absolute authority. "You have lost this battle. Your fleet is broken. Your soldiers are defeated. I am offering you one final chance to withdraw with the remnants of your forces." Thaxer looked around his bridge at his terrified crew, then at the tactical display. That showed only a handful of his ships still intact. Pride warred with survival instinct, and survival won. We withdraw," he said, the words tasting like poison in his mouth. "A wise choice," Captain Hyun replied. "You have 1 hour to collect your surviving forces and leave this system. If any Vextar ship is detected in this area after that time, we will consider it an act of continued aggression." The surviving Vextar ships began to flee, their crews eager to escape before the humans changed their minds about mercy. The great conquest fleet that had arrived with such confidence was limping away in defeat, broken by technology they could not understand and strategy they could not counter, as the last enemy vessel disappeared into hyperspace. The UES Indomitable's weapons powered down. The terrible harmony that had filled space faded away, leaving only the gentle hum of rescue operations continuing on the planet below. "Administrator Hana," Captain Hyun's voice returned to its earlier politeness, as if the complete destruction of an enemy fleet had been nothing more than a minor interruption. "The immediate threat has been neutralized. How are rescue operations proceeding?" Hana found her voice after a moment of stunned silence. "Almost complete, Captain. I don't know how to thank you." "No thanks necessary," Captain Hyun replied. "We're just glad we could help. Just glad they could help." As if saving an entire colony and defeating one of the galaxy's most feared fleets was simply another day's work for the human crew of the Indomitable. The aftermath of the battle was almost as strange as the battle itself. Where once a proud Vextar fleet had dominated the space around Nexus 7, now there was only empty void and the gentle presence of human rescue craft continuing their work. The absence was so complete it was hard to believe the enemy ships had ever existed at all. On his command ship, fleeing through hyperspace at maximum speed, War Commander Thaxer tried to understand what had happened to his forces. Of the 43 vessels in his fleet, only 7 remained. The rest had not been destroyed in any conventional sense. They had simply been erased from existence by weapons that treated the fundamental laws of reality as suggestions. "Status report," he demanded, his voice hollow with defeat. His tactical officer, one of the few bridge crew who had not fled in panic, consulted his displays with shaking hands. 36 vessels lost. No survivors detected. No debris fields. No energy signatures. They're just gone. Gone. Not destroyed. Not disabled. Not captured. Simply removed from the universe as if they had never been. Thaxer had seen many weapons in his long career of conquest, but nothing like this. The humans had technology that could edit reality itself. "What do we tell the High Command?" asked his communications officer. Thaxer considered the question. "How do you explain that your entire fleet was defeated by a single ship using impossible technology? How do you report that the supposedly extinct humans had returned with power beyond imagination?" "We tell them the truth," he said finally, "and we warn them never to attack human-protected worlds again." Meanwhile, back at Nexus 7, The rescue operations had entered their final phase. Captain Hyun's voice came over the communication system with a warmth that seemed incredible after the cold efficiency she had shown in battle. Administrator Hana, we're showing complete evacuation of all underground shelters. All civilians are safely aboard our rescue vessels. Medical treatment is proceeding for the injured. Hana felt tears running down her face as she looked at the displays showing her people safe and healthy aboard the human ships. Captain, I don't know what to say. You've saved everyone. How can we ever repay you? There's no debt here, Captain, Hyun replied gently. But we would like to make sure your colony is fully restored before we leave. My engineering teams are prepared to assist with reconstruction. Before Hana could respond, Nari's voice came from the engineering station, filled with excitement. Captain Hyun, this is Engineer Nari. I've been monitoring your ship's power systems, and I have to ask, how are you doing any of this? A new voice answered, male and cheerful. This is Engineer Bo-Ra of the Indomitable. Hello, Nari. We'd be happy to share some basic technical knowledge with you, though the advanced systems require infrastructure you don't currently have. But how do you power dimensional phase shifting? How do you manipulate matter at the quantum level? How do you access other universes for energy? Bo-Ra's laugh was warm and genuine. Those are excellent questions. The short answer is that we learn to work with the universe instead of against it. Space and time and matter are not obstacles to overcome, they're partners to dance with. Day had been watching the tactical displays, and he noticed something remarkable. Even as the human rescue ships worked around the planet, the Indomitable was doing something else. It was hunting down the few Vextar vessels that had tried to escape in different directions. Captain Hyun, he transmitted. Are you pursuing the fleeing enemy ships? Some of them, came the reply. A few vessels broke off from the main group and are heading toward inhabited systems. We cannot allow them to attack other colonies. What followed was a demonstration of strategic thinking that left Day, a professional soldier, speechless with admiration. The Indomitable did not simply chase the fleeing ships. It anticipated where they would go, appearing in their path before they arrived. When Vextar vessels tried to hide in asteroid fields or nebulae, the human ship found them anyway, as if it could see through any concealment. How are they tracking ships through hyperspace? Day asked, more to himself than anyone else. This is Tactical Officer Seok, came a crisp voice from the Indomitable. We're monitoring dimensional disturbances created by their faster-than-light drives. Hyperspace leaves traces that persist for several hours if you know how to read them. Several hours. The implications were staggering. The humans could track any ship that had used hyperspace for hours after it passed through an area. No fleet could hide from them. No escape route could remain secret. One by one, the fleeing Vextar ships were intercepted. Some surrendered immediately, when they realized they had been caught. Others tried to fight and were quickly erased from existence. A few attempted to target civilian shipping or space stations, and those vessels were eliminated with particular thoroughness. This is Captain Hyun to all Vextar vessels in this sector, came a broadcast on all military frequencies. Your war commander has already withdrawn his forces from Nexus 7. Any ship that continues hostile operations will be dealt with permanently. This is your only warning. The message was transmitted across 3 star systems, reaching every ship and station in the area. Within minutes, reports began coming in of Vextar vessels powering down their weapons and broadcasting surrender signals. Back on Nexus 7, the human reconstruction efforts were proceeding with the same impossible efficiency they had shown in battle. Repair drones materialized out of thin air and began fixing damaged buildings. Medical facilities were restored to full function in minutes. The quantum crystal mining equipment, which had been destroyed by Vextar bombardment, was rebuilt using techniques that seemed more like magic than engineering. "How are they doing this so quickly?" Hana asked, watching through the security cameras as her colony was restored before her eyes. "Matter manipulation technology," Nari replied, her voice filled with wonder. "They're converting raw materials at the molecular level. They can turn anything into anything else." June's voice came from the medical center where she was working, alongside human doctors. "Hana, you need to see what these people can do. They're healing injuries I thought were permanent, regenerating nerve tissue, rebuilding organs, even reversing genetic damage." The human medical technology was indeed remarkable. Colonists who had been wounded in the attack were not just healed, but improved. Old injuries were repaired, genetic defects corrected, even aging seemed to be partially reversed. "How is this possible?" June asked Dr. Min, one of the human medical officers. "We learned long ago that the body wants to heal itself," Dr. Min replied. "We just help it remember what perfect health looks like and give it the tools to get there." As the hours passed, it became clear that the humans were not just repairing the colony, they were improving it. The new buildings were stronger and more efficient than the originals. The mining equipment was more advanced than anything the colonists had seen before. Even the defensive systems were upgraded, though the humans assured them that such measures were probably unnecessary. "Why are you doing all this?" Hana asked during one of her conversations with Captain Hyun. "Because we can," the captain replied, simply. "Because you needed help, and we were able to provide it. Isn't that reason enough?" Day had been studying the defensive improvements the humans were installing. "Captain, these weapon systems are incredibly advanced. They would make us a target for anyone who wants to steal the technology. Don't worry about that," Captain Hyun said with what sounded like amusement. "The systems are designed to work only for the legitimate colonists of Nexus 7. Anyone who tries to steal them will find they've acquired very expensive paperweights." As night fell on Nexus 7, the reconstruction was nearly complete. The colony that had been reduced to ruins in hours had been rebuilt in a single day, better than it had ever been before. The colonists who had faced death that morning were now safer than they had ever been. But the most remarkable thing was not the technology or the efficiency or even the impossible weapons that had defeated the Vextar fleet. It was the simple fact that these powerful beings had chosen to help, asking nothing in return except the knowledge that innocent people were safe. "Captain Hyun," Hana transmitted as the last of the reconstruction work was completed. "I have to ask, why do humans help? You could rule the galaxy with this technology. You could take anything you wanted. Why do you choose to protect people instead?" There was a long pause before the captain answered, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of centuries of experience and the sadness of choices made in darkness. "Because a long time ago someone helped us when we needed it most," Captain Hyun said quietly, "and we learned that the only way to honor that gift is to pass it on to others." The simple truth of those words resonated through the communication system and into the hearts of everyone who heard them. In a galaxy full of conquerors and empire builders, the humans had chosen a different path. They had become guardians, watchers in the dark, helping when help was needed most. Dawn came to Nexus 7 with a gentle light that seemed to wash away the last traces of the previous day's terror. The colony that had faced extinction just 24 hours earlier now stood renewed and stronger than ever before. Buildings gleamed. In the morning sun, their walls made from materials that would last for centuries. The mining equipment hummed with quiet efficiency, extracting quantum crystals with precision that wasted nothing. In the command center, Hana stood at the same window where she had watched Vextar ships rain fire from the sky. Now she saw human transport vessels preparing for departure, their impossible technology making them look more like living creatures than machines. The sight filled her with both gratitude and a strange sadness. All evacuation ships have returned. Their passengers safely, reported Captain Yun over the communication system. Medical treatment is complete for all injured colonists. Reconstruction efforts have finished ahead of schedule. Hana activated her microphone. Captain, the entire colony owes you a debt we can never repay. You've given us back our lives and our future. We've given you back what was already yours, Captain Hyun replied gently. The courage, the community, the determination to build something good in a difficult galaxy, those were always part of who you are. Dai approached from the security station, where he had been studying the new defensive systems the humans had installed. Captain, I have to ask about these weapons. They're incredibly advanced, but they don't seem designed for offense. That's correct, came the voice of Tactical Officer Seok. They're purely defensive systems. They can protect your colony from attack, but they cannot be used to threaten others. We learned long ago that the best defense is one that cannot become a tool of aggression. The wisdom in those words struck Day deeply. In all his years as a soldier, he had seen how defensive weapons could quickly become offensive ones, how fear could turn into aggression. But the humans had found a way to provide protection without adding to the galaxy's capacity for violence. Nari had spent the night working alongside engineer Bora, learning about technologies that seemed to break. Every law of physics she thought she understood. Now she faced a choice that would define the rest of her career. Bora, she transmitted to the human ship. You've shown me things I never imagined possible. Would it be possible for me to continue learning? To maybe join your crew? There was a pause before Bora replied, and when he spoke, his voice was kind but serious. Nari, that's a path you can choose, but it's not one you can undo. Our technology requires more than just understanding. It requires a fundamental change in how you perceive reality itself. Are you prepared for that? Nari looked around at the colony that had been her home for 3 years, at the people who had become her family. Then she looked up at the stars and thought about the wonders she had glimpsed in the past day. I need time to think about it, she said finally. Of course, Bora replied. The offer will remain open. We'll be watching over this sector, and we can always use good engineers who understand that technology should serve life, not dominate it. In the medical center, June was saying goodbye to Dr. Min and the other human medical officers. The treatments they had provided had not just healed the wounded, but had taught her new approaches to medicine that would help her for years to come. The knowledge you've shared with me, June said, it will help so many people. That's the point, Dr. Min replied with a smile. Knowledge grows when it's shared. The techniques we've taught you will spread to other doctors, other worlds. That's how we make the galaxy a better place, one person at a time. As the morning progressed, it became clear that the humans were preparing to leave. Their rescue. Ships were docking with the Indomitable, and the impossible vessel itself was beginning to shift its configuration back to travel mode. The weapons that had erased an entire Vextar fleet were folding back into hidden spaces, leaving only the sleek lines of a ship designed for exploration rather than war. "Captain Hyun," Hana transmitted, "will we see you again?" "Perhaps," the captain replied. "We tend to appear when people need help the most, but hopefully you won't need that kind of help again anytime soon. What if we want to find you? What if other colonies need your assistance?" "We're always listening," Captain Hyun said. "Send out your distress calls on the old frequencies, the primitive radio bands that most people have forgotten. We'll hear them, no matter how far away we are." Day had been thinking about something that had puzzled him since the battle. "Captain, yesterday you destroyed an entire fleet without any apparent effort, but today you're treating us as equals, asking our permission, working alongside our people. Why?" "Because power without humility becomes tyranny," Captain Hyun replied. "We've learned that the strongest weapon in the universe is not the ability to destroy, but the choice not to destroy when you could. True strength comes from using your power to help others become strong themselves." The words resonated through the command center and beyond, reaching every person in the colony who was listening. Here was a philosophy that put service above, dominance, cooperation above conquest. It was a way of thinking that could transform the galaxy if enough people embraced it. As the UES Indomitable prepared for departure, Captain Hyun's voice came over the colony-wide communication system one final time. "People of Nexus 7, she said, her words carrying the warmth of genuine affection. "You have shown remarkable courage in the face of overwhelming odds. You protected each other, helped each other, and never gave up hope even when hope seemed impossible. That strength of spirit is more powerful than any weapon we possess." She paused, and when she continued, her voice carried a message that would be remembered for generations. The galaxy can be a dark and dangerous place, full of those who would take what does not belong to them. But it is also full of people like you, good people who choose to build rather than destroy, to help rather than harm. Never forget that you are not alone out here. Others are watching, others care, and help will come when you need it most. The transmission ended, and the Indomitable began to move. But it did not simply fly away like a normal ship. Instead, space around it began to shimmer and twist, reality bending to accommodate the vessel's departure. A tear opened in the fabric of the universe, revealing that strange color that hurt to look at directly. "Goodbye, friends," came Captain Hyun's final transmission. "Take care of each other." The UES Indomitable slipped through the dimensional opening and was gone. The tear in space sealed itself, leaving no trace that it had ever existed. Only the renewed colony and the memories of its people proved that the rescue had been real. In the days that followed, news of the battle spread throughout the sector. The story of how a single human ship had defeated the Vextar 7th Fleet became legend. Some versions were accurate, others were wildly exaggerated, but all carried the same essential message. The humans had returned, and they were watching. Vexitar raids in the region stopped completely. Other aggressive species became more cautious about attacking civilian targets. The mere possibility that a human warship might appear was enough to make potential conquerors think twice about their actions. But for the people of Nexus 7, the most important change was not in the galaxy around them. It was in themselves. They had learned that help could come from the most unexpected places, that there were still those who chose to protect rather than exploit. They had been reminded that even in the darkest moments, hope was never truly lost. Hana stood at her. office window, looking up at the stars where somewhere human ships moved through spaces between spaces, watching and protecting and helping when help was needed. She thought about Captain Hyun's words about honoring a gift by passing it on to others. "We'll be ready," she said quietly to the night sky. "When others need help, we'll be ready to give it." And in the vast darkness of space, where impossible, ships sailed between dimensions, those words were heard and recorded and remembered. The humans had planted seeds of hope in the fertile ground of grateful hearts, and those seeds would grow into a forest of kindness that would spread across the galaxy. The Watchers had done their work well, and they would continue to watch and to help until the galaxy learned that the strongest force in the universe was not the power to destroy, but the choice to create, to protect, and to hope. Somewhere in the space between spaces, Captain Hyun smiled and set course for the next place where help would be needed. The work was never finished, but it was good work, and there were others now who would carry it forward.